views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in this podcast are the content creator's own and do not represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of Essex County College. The material and information presented here is for entertainment and informative purposes only. It should not be considered as professional advice or a substitute for seeking professional guidance.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My name is Jon Inahuazo, the creator of the LONER, and welcome to Clubs Is It Worth It? The show where I discuss my personal experiences with the clubs and whether you should join them in your next semester. So I'm talking about the fall semester, I'm not talking about the summer semester. Most of these are dead. There is one thing I need to tell you right now as we start the show. Not everyone needs to join a club, but everybody at least needs to start with one independent study. So in that case, I'm talking about a personal project. But in other words, I'm not saying that I'm against collaboration, because as long as collaboration is important, so as becoming independent. Now you may be wondering where my beliefs comes from. Let's say that I have a question that may be important to you. And it's going to be an important question because it's going to determine your future. And when I'm talking about your future, that means I'm talking about what you're going to be doing after college and what you're going to be doing after graduation. Are you satisfied with your club? When it really comes to personal projects, like say that I've already made the story of Extra 24. 5 years ago, I was at home studying the basics of audio production. If there's one thing I never answered in that documentary, how do we get from old San Juanitos and Pasillos to modern Tecnocumbia? So let's just say that you're listening to ballads, but some of you may see them as sappy, too slow. In that case, some of you may see them as boring. So when cumbia came in, well, even though there were already cumbias in the 70s, in the 1980s they started to expand that genre and it started to experiment well. But then there's also rocolas, and that's when people said, we love that genre, we're going to listen to them. So when you lose an audience of ballads, some of them move to cumbias. And so that's where we have Tecnocumbia because it's all electronic based. So there you have it. That's an example of having a personal project. Speaking of which, we're going to go back on topic now. Today we're going to talk about the 360 Art Club, the Music Club, and the Pockets Club where I live. Let's start with the Art Club. When I was in high school, I was excelling well in painting. You can probably say I was excelling well in watercolor painting, sketching. But I never really thought much about the Art Club because they weren't available back in January of 2025. At the end of the day, here's what I see about this club. It can be fun and all, it'll be interesting. I mean, at best I would say the revival era of them is interesting and all. But it's all I see in this club is basically just a social hour, where you as a person get to talk with any other artist, but you won't be doing as much work. So if you're really into that, then you might as well just go to the cafeteria. You're better off just spending your time in the cafeteria because that way you'll be hearing all their conversations over and over. But I'm not complaining about that. Because at the end of the day, I feel like I'm going to have more fun listening to some cafeteria conversations more than what I'm able to do with the art club. But I wouldn't say that in the most offensive way. Now we're going to move on to the music club. The only requirements to join this club is if you're in a music major. Because that way you're going to fully understand what you're doing. But otherwise, it's just like high school. The only rare occasion about this club is when they do make original songs, they're going to rehearse them. And while they would claim it's one of the best clubs at ACC, I oppose of that, but otherwise I wouldn't say I disagree with them. At first, when I observed them, or at least when I first joined the club back in September 2025, I wasn't really expecting anything. When I first went with the club, I felt like I thought I was going to do something. I was going to do something for once. And turns out I never did. When it really came to the meetings on Thursdays and Fridays, they often just come up with ideas, and so it's like the film club. But instead of making films, you're going to be providing ideas for songs that you want to sing about. So what songs do you really want to sing? Otherwise, if you're there to produce the music, if you want to make your own original music, then you're better off doing it at home. But unless if you have the talent to play some instruments, then that'll be fine. But that's your only role. And occasionally it will be some original songs, but that's all you're going to be hearing. Now we're going to move on to our last topic, which is the podcast club. And as the vice president once said, it's going to be a source of news and entertainment, and something that will be informational. But for me, I feel like when it comes to my podcast, The Loner, sometimes I get views, sometimes I don't. But now I'm no longer worried about that, because as long as I'm able to continue with my project, then I feel like I'm able to show my abilities that the film club couldn't do. That's where I've made my own videos, that's where I've done everything for them. Sometimes I feel like I may suffer from burnout, which is why it's a good idea to understand what you're doing. So when I made a whole episode about execution, then I just know I need to understand how am I going to perceive this topic? Like, how am I going to execute this topic perfectly? I wouldn't say perfectly, but how would I do it well without trying to over-explain myself and how to ramble myself? If you're going to be here to contribute, if you're going to be here to be interviewed, to tell your own stories, to do anything in the podcast club, as much as you want to feel respected, just try your best to make your pilot episode. Just try to make a pitch deck. Because while I feel like a pitch deck may be essential to some of the production companies that you may work in, I feel like pitch decks are going to be important when you know what you're doing, when you know how you'd execute your show. Because without it, when everything is unscripted, and you may start to ramble on, and then you may have to worry about editing. So I guess that's all I can really say for myself. Listen to what I've done, listen to what Jerry has done, listen to like anybody. They've been successful, they've done interviews, they've done story times, they've done a bunch of personal stuff. They've done their conversations in the Pot Chat Club, because that's going to be the new show, which is going to be conversations and recordings from the podcast club itself. And so you'll be seeing me, you'll be seeing the Digital Outcast, you'll be seeing Just Be You, you'll be seeing all the hosts come together, talk about something, and basically have a 30 to 40 minute conversation, which in that case is going to last for at least not as long as an hour long show. But that's all I can really tell you for that. So if you have the time, please join the podcast club, because we do matter, but we're not saying that we do matter more than the other clubs that you've went through. Now that we've talked about these clubs, I guess the question becomes, what happens when one of these clubs phase out? That's when I would say some of them may die slowly, to where now we need to try. Most students will go out and try to revive the club, but it's already dead. They're no longer interested in their top. They're no longer interested in that niche. So they move on to another club, and that's where they go to. That's when I say your personal project is going to be your backup plan. Because without a backup plan, then you may not know what you're going to be doing in the future. And so that's why I'm going to embrace independent projects. And so even though it's a team collaboration, you just need to learn your abilities. And so that's where it all comes from. And it all comes from the title itself. It becomes this: like, is it really worth to join a club? Because at the end of the day, it's not going to be an easy answer for some of you, because some of you may say, yeah, it's worth joining. Some of you may say, no, it's not worth joining. Because at the end of the day, it's also going to be a debate. Whether you think it's important for you to join a club, and whether you want to contribute it or not. So with that in mind, the question becomes this: are you truly satisfied with your clubs? Yes or no? And why? I need you to be honest, because you can't just be saying, yes, I'm satisfied with it because I did this, I did that. No, I want you to be honest, whether you're an observer or you're a club member. And as long as you know what you're doing, as I said, as long as you know your role in your club, just try to go ahead and care about what your true intentions are. But don't try to use them as your agenda. Try to not manipulate them either. So with that said, this has been Clubs Is It Worth It? My name is Jon Inahuazo. Follow me on Instagram on XGRs24. And also follow me as the Loner on SLAOESSEX. And until then, have a pleasant good night and good morning. And this has been my podcast, Clubs Is It Worth It? And this was a submission for Professor Radio's audio production class. She was only interested in the intro and outro, so now that you know my opinions on each club, or at least the clubs I participated, like hopefully you weren't offended by what I thought about your club. And if there's any, like, in case you want me to reconsider, maybe I can go ahead and try again next semester, but I'm not going to go ahead and try again and then think that this is going to lead into my pursuit of happiness. At the conclusion of today's program, I will no longer be filming any of my shows, or at least any of the recorded content that I do at Ghost Study Incorporated, in my old bedroom, as I moved into a new bedroom, and this is basically my old bedroom. So, like I said already with my film, Don't Be Antisocial, I said I was going to renovate my bedroom, and that part wasn't a full lie, and that wasn't really an April Fool's joke when I did that. So, hopefully, you guys understood what I was trying to say in my film, but hopefully, you understand that I'm not always going to just stare and then just do nothing about it. So, there's one thing I've learned out of this film, and maybe there's one thing I've learned out of Jerry. I should be doing something, and maybe it's okay to not to be okay. If you want to know more about that, then go ahead and check out his recent episode, because I was a part of it, and then there was also a new member, by the way, named Robin. So she's gonna have her new show, by the way. So if you want to go ahead and tune in, it's gonna be another motivational show next to stay in your lane. Anyways, I think I'm gonna go ahead and end it here. But before I go, there is one thing I want to go ahead and there is one more thing I wanted to discuss. This has nothing to do with clubs or anything. So I went on Twitter, and then there was this username called the Looney Tunes Critic. And here's the thing about Looney Tunes. Like, I remember when I was younger, I used to watch Looney Tunes on Cartoon Network or Boomerang. And you know how I did Raw's critiques and how I said that show failed? So it's not just only the Loud House Critic who I said it wasn't really just critiques. They were mostly just reaction videos. The Looney Tunes Critic is just as bad as him. Yeah, apparently decided to go ahead and make a whole post about it from Gons. Gons, I don't know how to say it, but either way. So he said that, so basically this guy decided to go ahead and post a video where he was doing some voice impressions, and one of them included Daffy Duck. And then this critic just said, I'm not in, well, this critic apparently said that nobody wants to hear your voice impressions because that's not how voice acting works, or whatever he said. And then, yeah, that just led to backlash. Sometimes when you do a lot of voice acting, then you just start out with voice impressions. And even, the thing is, I will support that. But when you just say this opinion like that, and then you don't even realize that your favorite voice actors start out with voice impressions, or even just taking over the role of a character that you may know, like think of an iconic character. So I guess the lesson is, like, don't listen to the critic. Like, I guess the lesson to this episode is, or at least to this Twitter post, don't ever listen to this guy. Don't support him if that's the way he wants to say. Oh, because voice impressions aren't the best way to do voice acting. You gotta do this. No, just don't listen to that. And also, don't listen to me when I did that first episode where I talked about targeting or anything like that. I don't even know much about critiques or criticism myself, but I am learning as time goes on. And if you're a critic who wants to say, oh, you got to do voice acting, but voice impressions isn't the way, then it's like, that's like saying if you want to go to college, but they won't accept your fan art. But I think that's a whole different story. That's a whole different thing. So I don't think my comparisons will fit in there. But unless if it does, then it will. But I don't know. But I think that's all I wanted to say. I'm not going to go ahead and try to ramble for a little bit longer, so I'm going to go ahead and end today's show here. So again, hope you guys enjoyed that Clubs episode and also this bonus Loner episode. But hey, like I said, you got two episodes in one again, so it really is what it is. Well, I'm going to go ahead and end right here. So again, this is me, the Loner, and I will catch you guys next week. And if I don't catch you guys next week, then I will catch you guys whenever I'm here with yet another episode. But I can't really promise that I will do another episode like this one.
This has been a production of the Essex County College Podcast Club. Copyright 2024, all rights reserved.